The first time I realized something was wrong with that apartment, I was lying awake at 3 a.m, staring at a crack in the ceiling and silently begging the people upstairs to stop dragging their damn furniture. I remember the exact thought. If they move that chair one more time, I'm going to lose it. I didn't say it out loud. I didn't whisper it, didn't mutter it into the pillow. It stayed locked behind my teeth, just like 100 other petty, ugly thoughts I never let anyone hear. Then the noise stopped. Not gradually. Not like someone sat down. It stopped like somebody hit a power switch on the whole building. For a few seconds, the silence felt like relief. Then it went on just a little too long. Thick, close, heavy enough that I could hear my own pulse in my ears. Old buildings are never truly quiet. There's always something. Pipes, refrigerators, traffic. But that night it felt like someone had put their finger to the building's mouth and everything held its breath with me. I told myself I was just tired. New apartment, thin walls, cheap rent. I'd moved in because it was what I could afford after the accident, not because it felt like a home. The paint bubbled on the walls. The hallway smelled like boiled cabbage and bleach. My unit 303 shared one wall with 304, which the landlord had called a long-term vacancy in the same tone you'd use for a lingering disease. I must have fallen asleep at some point because the next thing I remember clearly is the light under my door. Morning light filters dirty in that building, squeezing through dusty blinds in thin, uneven stripes. I rolled out of bed, feet hitting the cold floor, and shuffled toward the kitchen, already dreading work. That's when I saw it. Just inside my door, resting on the worn linoleum, was a folded piece of white paper. No envelope, no printing, just a neat, precise fold. I'm the kind of person who notices stupid details. I knew that floor had been empty when I'd come in last night. No flyers, no mail, nothing. I picked it up. The paper was cool, like it hadn't been there long. I could see ink pressing faintly through from the inside. I hesitated for a second, then opened it. 8 words. Black ink. Steady, unfamiliar handwriting. You're not wrong. They've moved that chair 3 times. I read it twice before my brain caught up. The first thing I felt wasn't fear, it was irritation. Creepy neighbor with a sense of humor, I thought. Except I replayed the night in my head as the coffee dripped. The dark, the ceiling, the sound of the chair, the thought I'd had. I hadn't spoken, not once. The more I tried to remember saying something, the more the back of my neck prickled. I folded the note and opened my door. The hallway was empty. To the right, the corridor turned the corner. To the left, the dead-end wall and the chained emergency exit. Directly beside me, 304, the empty apartment. Its door looked like mine, just older. No welcome mat, no decoration, no scuffs from shoes or deliveries. The gap under it was just wide enough for a folded piece of paper to slide through. I looked down at the note in my hand. You're not wrong. They've moved that chair 3 times. The silence behind that door felt suddenly deliberate, like someone was holding their breath just on the other side of the wood, listening for what I would think next. I skipped work that day. I called in, not feeling well, which was the closest I could get to the truth without sounding insane. I kept circling the tiny apartment, always ending up back at the door, feeling the weight of that note in my pocket. Rational explanations lined up, one by one. Someone on another floor slipped the note under the wrong door. A bored neighbor had guessed. Maybe I had muttered without realizing. You can talk in your sleep, right? People hear things through thin walls. By mid-morning, I'd convinced myself the answer was simple. Ask the landlord who was in 304 and tell them to cut it out. His office was a converted closet off the lobby, smelling like coffee and damp paper. He looked up when I opened the door, squinting at me over his receipts. 303, right? You got a problem already? Is someone staying in 304? I asked. Next to me? 304's empty, he said, automatic. Told you that when you signed. No renter, no one in, no one out. What about storage? Maintenance? Anyone with a key besides you? Why? His gaze dropped as I unfolded the note on his desk. He read it, flipped it, frowned. Secret admirer? It was under my door, I said. There's nobody else on my side. It came from 304. He stared at me for a long beat, then sighed. Come on, I'll show you. Maybe if you see there's nothing in there, you'll stop freaking yourself out. We climbed the stairs together. The 3rd-floor hallway felt cooler than the lobby, like the air had gone stale from sitting too long. 304's door looked blank, unused. He slid the key in, jiggled it, and the lock gave with a dry click. The smell hit me as soon as he opened the door. Old sealed air, not rot, not garbage, just unused. He flipped the light switch out of habit. Nothing happened. "Power's off," he muttered. "Got your phone?" My flashlight cut a cone of white into the dim. The place was bare. No furniture, no curtains, no boxes. Just scuffed floors, beige walls, and a kitchen that hadn't seen water in months. Every sound from the hallway died at the threshold. Inside, even our footsteps sounded muted, like they were being absorbed instead of echoing. "See?" he said. "Empty. Windows locked. No squatters. No weirdos. Just dust." I should have felt relieved. Instead, my attention caught on the shared wall, the one that backed onto my bedroom. Down near the baseboard were faint scratches, short horizontal marks, clustered in one spot. "What's that from?" I asked. He glanced over. "Chair, probably. People drag furniture instead of lifting it. Drives the downstairs neighbors nuts." A chair. They've moved that chair 3 times. Imagining someone sitting there, pressed against the wall listening, made my skin crawl. I stepped closer until I could feel the cold of the wall without touching it. "You ever hear anything through from my side?" I asked. "You just moved in," he said. "Haven't heard a peep from you. You're one of the quiet ones." One of the quiet ones. On the way back to my apartment, I noticed something I'd never seen. A small fingerprint pressed into the paint on my doorframe at eye level. On 304's frame, at the same height, another faint smudge. Like someone had stood between those 2 doors once, hand outstretched, not sure which one to choose. I went back inside and locked up. The silence on the other side of the wall felt thicker now that I'd been in the room it belonged to. It wasn't just absence of sound. It felt like something with its ear pressed flat against the plaster, waiting for my next thought. For a few days, I forced myself to act like it was nothing. I went to work, came home, watched trash on my phone until my eyes hurt. I kept the note in a drawer and told myself it was a mistake, but every time I passed 304, the skin between my shoulder blades tightened. And every night, lying in bed with that shared wall inches from my head, I'd feel it. The attention, not noise, not a presence, just the sense that my thoughts weren't staying entirely mine. On the 4th night, another note appeared. I found it just inside my door after dragging myself home from a miserable day. Same paper, same fold. "Stop pretending it doesn't bother you." That was the exact sentence I'd thought on the stairs, hand on the railing. "It doesn't bother me. I'm fine." Followed by the quiet truth underneath it. "You're lying. It's eating you alive." The paper trembled in my hand. I stared at the door to 304 through the peephole. The hallway was empty. No feet, no movement under the gap. Just that patient rectangle of wood. I tried to prove it was a person. That night, I decided to bait whoever was listening. I lay in bed, lights off, staring at the ceiling, and thought a sentence I'd never allowed to fully form before. The truth is, sometimes I wish I hadn't survived the accident. The words fell heavy in my mind. I held my breath and waited. Nothing. The fridge hummed. A car passed outside. My upstairs neighbor walked across their floor. The building settled. I got up to brush my teeth, telling myself I was ridiculous. When I came back, there was a note on the floor by my bed. "You would have died sadder than you are now." My legs gave out. I sat down hard on the mattress, heart pounding in my throat. That sentence cut right through me because it was cruel and because it was true. Back then, I'd been more broken than I am now, no matter how stuck I feel. That's when I understood. It wasn't repeating what I thought. It was answering, commenting. After that, I stopped trusting my own head. During the day, every stray thought felt broadcast. At home, I layered noise, TV, radio, fan, podcasts, trying to drown myself out. But thoughts leak. They slip through the cracks. The notes kept coming, always tied to something I never said out loud. You like it when people think you're stronger than you are. They'd notice if you disappeared, but not for long. You're bored of your own grief. The handwriting always looked a little like mine. Not exactly, just close enough that if someone showed it to my sister, she might hesitate. One night, angry and shaking, I tried to confront it. I stuck a sticky note on my side of the wall and wrote in big black letters, "What do you want?" I stood there, pen in hand, waiting. Nothing. 10 minutes, 20. Finally, I tore it down, disgusted with myself, and threw it away. The lights flickered once. The next morning, when I woke up, a yellow sticky note was on the wall where mine had been. Same size, same brand, but I hadn't put it there. I already have it. 4 words, no explanation. I didn't have to ask what it meant. I already knew my attention, my secrets, the parts of me I only ever visited in total silence. After that, the apartment became a map of small, wrong details. New scratches appeared near the baseboard along the shared wall, mirroring the ones I'd seen from 304's side. Little overlapping lines where paint had been rubbed away, like someone had dragged the leg of a chair back and forth on their side, and the damage had somehow bled through. There were gaps in my memory, too, moments where I'd be in the kitchen reaching for a mug, blink, and suddenly I'd be in the bedroom with no idea how I got there. 5 minutes gone. 10. My cheap notebook, the log where I'd started recording every note, every weird sound, every flicker of the lights, kept showing up in places I didn't remember leaving it. Always closer to the wall. I tried to talk to my sister without really telling her anything. Over the phone, with her kids yelling in the background, I asked, "You ever feel like your place is listening to you?" She laughed, then heard something flat in my voice and sobered. "You're scaring me." "You okay?" It's really quiet here," I said. "Too quiet." "So leave," she said simply. "Come stay with me for a while." I thought about it. About escaping, about her noisy house, the chaos, the distraction. For a second I felt something like hope. Then my eyes slid to the wall. The quiet behind it felt almost offended. "I can't," I said. "You mean you won't?" Same thing right now. That night a note waited on my pillow right where my head would have been. "You don't want to leave because you're afraid I'll be lonely without you?" The worst part was that some small warped part of me recognized the thought, this, whatever it was, had been with me through nights when even I couldn't stand myself. It knew every ugly thing I'd ever thought and still hadn't turned away. I started keeping my log more carefully. I wrote down the notes and the thoughts that came before them. Patterns emerged. The notes clustered around moments of real silence. Not just quiet. Actual absence. No TV, no cars, no pipes. Gaps. It didn't react to the nonsense noise I filled the place with. It waited for the pauses, the breath between. One Thursday I came home to find every written page torn out of my notebook. The remaining pages flapped, clean and empty. My heart went cold. I found the first page jammed in the hairline crack between my wall and the floorboards. It had been crumpled, then smoothed. On the back, in that almost mine handwriting, "Stop trying to keep score, you won't like the numbers." That was when I snapped. That night, instead of filling the space with sound, I did the opposite. I turned everything off. TV, radio, fan, even the buzzing fridge. The apartment settled into a pure, dense silence that felt like cotton stuffed in my ears. If you're there, do something, I thought, on purpose. Carefully. Nothing. Scratch, I thought. Write. Flicker the lights. Prove I'm not just losing my mind. For a long time there was nothing. Then I heard it. A slow, deliberate breathing from the other side of the wall. Not mine. Too slow. Too controlled. Inhale. Pause. Exhale. I pressed my hand against the wall. The paint was ice cold. The breathing stopped. Directly under my palm, 4 sharp scratches dragged down the other side. I felt them in my bones. The lights flickered. My phone screen lit up. 2:03 a.m. I didn't sleep. At dawn, I went downstairs and begged the landlord to show me 304 one more time. "Last time," he grumbled, but brought out the ring of keys. Inside, the air was even staler than before. The same bare room, same dirty windows. Except now, the scratches on the shed wall were deeper, and halfway up, the faint shape of a handprint. Not painted, not drawn, just the slight shine of skin oil that had been there a long time. I didn't have to match my hand to know it would fit. Near the baseboard, a scrap of paper stuck out of the crack between wall and floor. I pulled it free. It was one of my missing notebook pages, crumpled and smoothed. On the back, "Tonight you need to be on this side." My pocket burned with those words all day. By the time night came, I'd made a decision. I was going to leave. I took out my duffel, filled it, even pictured myself on my sister's couch. But sometime after midnight, I found myself standing in the hallway, barefoot, my hand resting on 304's doorknob. I had no memory of deciding to step out of my own apartment, no memory of the walk from one door to the other. Under my palm, the knob turned. Not by me, from the other side. The latch gave, the door eased open an inch, and cold, stale air slid over my bare feet. I could have backed away. I should have. Instead, I stepped inside. The silence hit like a wall. All the building's usual sounds cut off. The room was the same, bare walls, dirty window, scuffed floor, but it felt less empty. The landlord's voice about just dust felt like a joke. Against the shared wall where the scratches were deepest sat a wooden chair. I knew immediately it hadn't been there before. The floor beneath its front legs was worn into shallow grooves. Beside it, a small table. On the table, a neat stack of blank white paper and a short, dull pencil. My mind reacted before my body did. I shouldn't be here, I thought. The pencil rolled, lifted, and set its tip on the top sheet. With slow, deliberate strokes, it wrote, I shouldn't be here. Same words, same order, same punctuation. My breath came shallow. I backed up until my shoulders hit the opposite wall. What do you want? I whispered, but the pencil didn't move. It didn't seem to care about spoken words at all. Fine, I thought, and let my mind go where it always tried not to the accident. Glass, metal, the too sudden silence after impact, the endless loop of, I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm sorry. The pencil dragged across the paper, copying the apology, line after line, until the words blurred into a dark smudge. You never finished, it wrote next. Finished what? My voice sounded thin, thinking it. I gripped the back of the chair. It was faintly warm from use that couldn't have happened. I pictured other people sitting there, pressed against the same wall, their thoughts funneled into neat stacks of paper. Sit, the pencil wrote. My knees bent reflexively. For a second, I felt the ghost of the seat under me, like the room was pulling me down. No. The refusal came from somewhere deeper than fear. I yanked my hand off the chair. You, the pencil started, pressing so hard the tip snapped on the paper. The broken graphite rolled off the table. You choose the thought. It had written earlier. I keep it. Missing notebook pages, memory gaps, thoughts that felt strangely lighter afterward. It hadn't just been copying, it had been collecting, filing pieces of me away on this side of the wall. What happens when you're done? I asked. When you've taken enough? You leave, it wrote. Leave the apartment. You leave, not comforting, not specific. What is you? I whispered. What do you think you have? After a long pause, the pencil pressed down hard enough to tear the paper. You. Something broke in me then. I lunged for the door. This time it resisted, heavy with a weight I couldn't see. The building's silence pressed against my back. I'm not staying here, I said, teeth clenched. You don't get to keep me in your little filing cabinet. I threw my shoulder into the wood, once, twice. On the third hit, the latch snapped and the door flew open. Sound flooded in. The hum of the hallway light, a distant TV, a door slamming on another floor. I stumbled back into my own apartment and slammed my door behind me. A folded note waited on my floor like it had been expecting me. You're right, it read. You're still here. For now. I packed for real after that. No more half decisions. No more staring at bags and putting them away. I called my sister, told her I was coming. She didn't ask many questions. Maybe she heard what I wasn't saying. The landlord barely looked up when I told him I was leaving. You break the lease, you lose the deposit. He said, keep it, I said. Keep this month's rent too. Money felt irrelevant compared to getting away from that wall. Back upstairs, my apartment looked smaller, stripped. My stuff fit into a few boxes and one tired duffel. The silence on the other side of the wall was almost smug. I could feel it pressed into the paint. I did one last sweep. In the bedroom under the bed, I found a final note. You'll talk more when you leave, it said. You think that makes you safer. I crushed it in my fist and threw it in the trash. I'm done talking to you, I said. For once, it didn't answer. I stayed with my sister for 3 weeks. Her house was chaos, kids yelling, dog barking, cartoons at full blast. The silence never lasted long enough to solidify. I slept on the couch without a TV on for the first time in months. I started therapy. I really talked about the accident, about guilt, about why I'd chosen to live alone in a cheap, empty building like I deserved to be punished. I didn't mention the notes. Some things still felt dangerous to say out loud. Eventually, I found a new apartment. Newer building, clean lobby, functioning elevator, bland artwork in the hallways. My unit was small but bright, with one feature the leasing agent thought was a selling point. This wall, she said, tapping the blueprint, backs up to dead space. Old utility shaft they don't use anymore. No neighbors on that side. You won't hear a thing. Dead space. I hesitated for half a second, then signed. On move-in day, after the boxes were stacked and my sister had taken the kids home, I stood alone in my new bedroom. The wall with no neighbors on the other side looked harmless. Fresh paint, no scuffs, no scratches, no faint handprints. I pressed my palm to it. The surface was cool but not unnaturally so. The silence there felt neutral. The first week, I overanalyzed everything, every creak, every distant laugh. Sometimes I'd catch myself tensing, waiting for the soft slide of paper on the floor. It never came. I started to relax, just a little. Then, one night, maybe 2 weeks in, I came home bone-tired from an ordinary bad day. The kind of day that would have turned into 3 notes back at the old place. I kicked off my shoes, dropped my bag, and leaned in the bedroom doorway. The dead space wall glowed softly in the streetlight. Empty. Clean. A thought surfaced, lazy with relief. At least there's no one on the other side of that wall. I didn't say it. I didn't even linger on it. It just slid through, unguarded, and left behind a warm looseness in my chest. A second later, the apartment went still. The upstairs neighbor's music cut off mid-beat. The fridge finished a cycle and didn't start a new one. No cars passed outside. The silence that followed felt horribly familiar. Something thin and papery brushed the floor near the front door. I froze. Every part of me recognized that sound, the soft, dry whisper of a folded note being pushed under the threshold. My legs felt numb as I walked to the entryway. The door was closed, chain-latched, deadbolt slid. On the floor just inside lay a small folded sheet of white paper. Same size, same weight, same neat crease. I picked it up, every nerve in my fingertips screaming, and unfolded it. Same handwriting, same 2 steady lines, same almost familiar tilt. 4 words. That's better. It's quieter here. So now I know. It was never just that building, or that specific apartment, or the empty unit next door. Whatever lives in that kind of silence doesn't care about leases or addresses. It lives in empty rooms, in sealed shafts, in dead space where sound doesn't quite reach. It waits for people like me, the quiet ones, the ones with too many unfinished thoughts, and it listens. I left that first apartment. I changed walls, cities, routines. I talk more now. I fill my days with noise and other people's voices. But at night, when everything finally winds down, and there's a long enough pause between the sounds, I still feel it sometimes, leaning in from whatever space is beyond the wall, patient as ever, waiting for the next thing I'll never say out loud. If you've ever had a thought you were afraid wasn't just yours or felt like the quiet itself was listening to you, tell me in the comments, share your story, and subscribe. Because as long as we keep talking, maybe we can make it just loud enough that whatever waits in the silence has a harder time getting through.